In the manicured lawns of Oakwood Meadows, where every hedge was trimmed to perfection and every mailbox gleamed under the suburban sun, a single blade of grass could spark a war. That's exactly what happened when Karen Blackwell, the iron-fisted president of the Homeowners Association, dialed the police on the Thompson family for letting their lawn creep 3 inches too high. It was absurd, petty, and the kind of overreach that made neighbors whisper behind closed curtains. But for David Thompson, his wife Sarah, and their sons Ethan, 10, and Lucas, 12, it was just the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel a web of corruption hidden beneath the neighborhood's polished facade. The Thompsons had moved to Oakwood Meadows seeking a fresh start. David, a quiet man with a background in finance, had taken a job transfer that promised stability after years of city chaos. Sarah, a former teacher turned stay-at-home mom, dreamed of backyard barbecues and community playdates. The boys were thrilled about the bigger yard and the promise of new friends. Oakwood Meadows looked idyllic, rows of cookie-cutter homes with white picket fences, a community pool, and strict rules that kept everything pristine. But beneath the surface lurked tensions, whispers of fines for minor infractions, families driven out over trivial disputes, and Karen's unyielding control over it all. At first, the family was optimistic. They unpacked boxes, planted flowers, and waved at passers-by. But warning signs appeared early. During a welcome barbecue, a neighbor pulled David aside. "Watch out for Karen," he muttered. "She's got eyes everywhere. Last year, she hounded the Johnsons until they sold their house." David laughed it off, but Sarah felt a chill. Karen, with her sharp bob haircut and clipboard always in hand, patrolled the streets like a self-appointed sheriff, noting every perceived violation. The harassment started subtly. One morning, a formal letter arrived in their mailbox. Violation notice. Grass exceeds regulation height by 3 inches. Immediate compliance required. It was signed by Karen Blackwell, HOA president. David shrugged and mowed the lawn that afternoon, thinking it was a one-off. But the next day, as the family sipped coffee on the porch, they spotted her, Karen, crouched in their front yard with a ruler, measuring the grass blades one by one. When she saw them watching, she bolted like a thief, her face flushed with embarrassment or rage. The second notice came swiftly, demanding a $200 fine. The language was aggressive, accusing them of blatant disregard for community standards. What raised eyebrows was the violation number, 2,847. How could one neighborhood rack up that many? David paid it to keep the peace, but Sarah started keeping a log. Karen's surveillance escalated. She quizzed neighbors about the Thompsons' schedules, their cars, even what time the kids got home from school. One evening, Ethan burst in from playing outside. "Mom, that lady's taking pictures of our house again." Sure enough, Karen was across the street, snapping photos with her phone. The third letter threatened legal action, eviction proceedings if they didn't comply with all future directives. The family was baffled. Their lawn was immaculate now. Lucas reported seeing Karen post a bulletin on the community board, "Beware of dangerous precedents set by non-compliant residents. Property values at risk." It felt personal, obsessive. Tensions simmered as hidden resentments bubbled up. Was this just a power trip, or something darker? The Thompsons debated confronting her, but decided to document everything instead, snapping their own photos and noting dates. The boiling point hit at an emergency HOA meeting Karen called in the community center. She stood at the podium like a prosecutor, projecting slideshows of the Thompsons' yard-zoomed-in shots of that infamous grass, charts showing declining property values, and veiled threats of lawsuits. "These newcomers are a threat to everything we've built," she declared, her voice echoing off the walls. She proposed tripling fines and mandatory home inspections, painting the family as villains who could ruin us all. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors nodded in agreement, fearful of their own dues rising, but others shifted uncomfortably. "Isn't this a bit much over some grass?" one woman asked. Karen dismissed her with a wave. "Rules are rules. Without them, we're no better than a slum." David and Sarah attended, staying calm. David stood and said simply, "We'll mow as needed. No need for drama." But as the meeting ended, they overheard Karen in the hallway, whispering to a man in a gray suit. "It's time to escalate to phase 2, she hissed. "They think they can ignore me?" That night, the real intrusion came. Sarah woke to a noise in the backyard and peeked out to see Karen sneaking around with a tape measure, checking their fence height. Heart pounding, David flung open the door. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. Karen froze, then snarled, enforcing standards, before fleeing into the shadows. The confrontation left the family shaken. Was she unhinged, or part of something bigger? Fed up, the Thompsons flipped the script. No more playing defense. David started jogging the neighborhood routes, chatting with residents under the guise of friendliness. Sarah volunteered for community projects, gleaning gossip. The kids became pint-sized spies, reporting Karen's comings and goings. Revelations poured in. Neighbors confessed Karen had forced out 3 families in the past year alone, one over a non-approved mailbox color, another for excessive holiday lights. Whispers of kickback surfaced. Karen steered all maintenance contracts to a single company, owned by her brother, inflating costs and pocketing the difference. Her brother was a real estate mogul who flipped foreclosed properties in the area, often after HOA fines pushed owners to sell cheap. Digging deeper, the family uncovered Karen's sordid past. A late-night online search revealed she'd run similar scams in Phoenix and 2 other cities, embezzling HOA funds, harassing residents into submission, then laundering money through shell companies. Court records showed arrests for fraud and harassment, but she'd always slithered away with plea deals. Patterns emerged: inflated fines funneled into emergency funds that vanished, properties sold at a loss to insiders. The Thompsons pieced together a scam worth millions, preying on suburban trust. But was it just her, or a network? The controversy brewed. HOAs were meant to protect communities, yet here was one weaponized for personal gain, sparking debates about overreach and corruption in everyday America. Things turned dangerous when Karen called the police again, claiming a domestic disturbance at the Thompsons' home and suspicious activity, like they were running a meth lab. Officers arrived skeptical, finding only a family eating dinner. David handed over their log. Photos, letters, timestamps. "This is harassment," Sarah insisted. The cops nodded. They'd dealt with Karen before. "She's got a reputation," one admitted. But Karen didn't back down. She cornered Sarah at the grocery store, hissing, "I have connections. You'll regret this." Soon after, a black sedan started parking nearby, watching the house. Surveillance or intimidation? Desperate, the Thompsons made a secure call to a field office. David's finance background? It was a cover. He and Sarah were undercover Homeland security agents, investigating financial crimes tied to real estate fraud. The query on Karen lit up red flags. A multi-state network defrauding HOAs of over $2 million, involving corrupted officials and money laundering. A retired detective they contacted spilled more. "It's a national ring. They've bought off local cops in some towns. Be careful, ruthless." The kids unwittingly became key players. Ethan spotted Karen exchanging envelopes with the gray-suited man in a park. Lucas, tech-savvy, traced business licenses online, linking her to interstate shells. The family set up discreet cameras, recording Karen's meetings. Audio captured damning words. "Transfer the funds before they sniff it out," she ordered. And that family. Eliminate the problem if needed. A death threat, clear as day. To provoke her, they staged a federal operation, vans with official-looking decals parked openly, agents in suits milling about. Karen panicked, calling an emergency HOA meeting where she ranted wildly. "They're not who they say. Federal spies trying to take us down." Her outburst exposed her guilt. How else would she know? Climax erupted under the cover of night. Red paint splashed across their driveway. Enough. Hours later, shadows moved Karen and 2 accomplices creeping with gasoline cans, intent on arson. Cameras rolled as they doused the garage. But federal backup swarmed in, sirens blaring. Freeze. Homeland security. Guns drawn, they cuffed the trio mid-act. Karen screamed obscenities, her facade shattered. In the chaos, David revealed their true identities. "We've been investigating your fraud ring for months." The neighborhood watched in shock as arrests unfolded. The takedown was swift. Coordinated raids across 5 states netted 18 suspects, recovering every penny of embezzled funds. Karen faced the harshest blow: 25 years for fraud, embezzlement, attempted arson, and conspiracy to murder. Her accomplices got 5 to 15 years each. The HOA restituted $67,000 to residents, funds siphoned off in bogus fees. Oakwood Meadows transformed a new, transparent president was elected, rules relaxed, and the Thompsons hailed as heroes. Ethan and Lucas became local celebrities, regaling classmates with tales of espionage. The agents earned commendations, their cover intact for future ops. Yet, peace felt fragile. In their garden, they planted flowers spelling justice, a symbolic nod to resilience. But an anonymous letter arrived one day. This isn't over. It hinted at deeper corruption, perhaps untouchable players still lurking. The Thompsons reflected on the ordeal, a stark lesson that suburban bliss often masks greed, and justice demands vigilance. Debates raged online and in living rooms. Were HOA's tyrannical tools ripe for abuse? Did the family's undercover tactics cross ethical lines, invading privacy for the greater good? In a world of hidden agendas, one family's stand exposed the rot, but at what cost? The controversy lingered, challenging notions of community, power, and the American dream itself.